because every time this is such a cliche, but it's true. Like, I think I'm not alone in thinking, like, well, I probably should stop with the old drinking. But boy, I've got it bad now. How impossible would it be for me to meet a woman sober? And you wrote about that relatively a while ago, but I had it I had it in the file. If you'd ever grace us with your presence again, I love that I'm mansplaining your article. This is a Dr. Bartender sober coach mashup, guys. But basically, in a nutshell, back when I was drinking, sex was easy for me. See, right away, we don't have something in common. Without booze, I was modest, a chronic overthinker who flinched when she undressed, but pour a bottle of Malbec in it, and I became an exhibitionist, all windows open. The self-consciousness that tyrannized me in daylight. You're such a good writer. In an endless series of why nots, the high stakes erotic entanglements, all of these things you write were very tough to replicate, if at all, when you didn't have, and obviously it is a crutch, but still it's something that most people use, particularly on first dates, the cup full of booze. How does honestly, I don't know how that works. I don't remember the last time I had sober sex. I will add, I don't remember the last time I had sex. But I mean, I know that this is obviously, I think, an issue for a lot of people. Is it just practice makes perfect? How does this even work?
Well, I would, first of all, I think one of the reasons that I wrote that piece is because it was the number one question I would get asked.
I see. There you go.
And not even people that had drinking problems. It was just, anybody that knew I had been sober for whatever 10 years was just sort of like, how on earth do you date without it?
Yeah.
It was one of the hardest questions for me to solve. And, I think I spent the first 2 years, I say that I spent the first 2 years in like an erotic isolation chamber, which was true. Like, I really didn't know what to do. I think for so many of us, it's just like, it's basically the connect the dots of dating. And that was, sometimes it was fine, sometimes it was exciting, sometimes it was a disaster. But when it went away, what do you do? One of the things I noticed was that I was far more discerning when I was not drinking. There's a reason why guys want to be drinking with women on dates. I mean, it's kind of like dating in easy mode or cheat mode, It's keeping the game on its lowest level.
Yeah, I mean, there's the whole, all the cliches can apply. Social elixir, drunk goggles a lot of times for the dudes, and especially for the women. I would say 90% more for the women. The drunk goggles, like all of those things absolutely apply. And but again, also just the initial stuff, the first date stuff of keeping the conversation going. I don't know. And then I'm sure there's so many studies that have been done that say how much of it is all in our head. But for whatever reason, you get a little bit of the giggle juice in you, or the talkie juice, even better. The conversation just tends to flow more. I don't know. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, and the other thing is it took me a while to kind of figure out how to do more of the looser signal, like I could keep a conversation going. To do things like touching people. I mean, one of the things that happens when you get drunk is that you get less of a kind of sense of your personal space, and you start kind of leaning in, and it just sort of happens.
Yes.
And it took a really long time for me to do that consciously. And a lot of it for me was just confidence, being comfortable in my own body, and realizing that I was comfortable with the other person.
And they always say in AA, and I guess with all of them, that like, or if you're getting out of rehab, that you shouldn't date for a year. I wonder if that's part of it. But then the other thought being that you're just delaying the inevitable of going through all these hard things without the chemicals. Like, you're just delaying it by another year because it's going to be a year to get used to it anyway.
I don't know what the reasoning is for not drinking for a year in AA, but I can tell you that when I was trying to quit drinking, and not following that rule, it was always on date that I would relapse.
Yeah.
Because I would get so nervous. And I would just be like, there's no way I could do this. I can't even get through this. Like, I would go to a date, completely resolved not to drink. And I would literally sit down and be like, waitress, Like I would last like 5 seconds. So I think that discomfort, for so many of us, it's just completely wrapped around the ritual of intimacy and getting to know each other and loosening yourself up.
Now, I'm curious if you, over the years, have developed other sorts of rituals or comforts to make the uncomfortable a little more bearable, or at least enjoyable, if that's possible. Like, are there certain mantras you say to yourself? Are there certain things you wear in order to kind of get to that comfort and confidence level?
Yeah, I wonder if that's true. I mean, one of the things that happened after I quit drinking was that I kind of started taking a lot more, I started getting a lot girlier. Like I was taking a lot more care in my appearance. And I think the ritual around just kind of like getting dressed up and gussied up had a lot more, I don't know, excitement around it. But honestly, the biggest turn on to me is a great conversation. And that kind of conversation where you lose your self-consciousness. And that's when you know, like, okay, this is long.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, boy, that's a lot. I know we get it, Joe. You're in control of everything. But would you find, like, back a long time ago when you would go on, like, a first date or something that the cocktail would help?
Yeah, definitely. The cocktail gets rid of any initial awkwardness.
Right.
However, my issue being, I believe in the sort of AA community. I'm known as a normie because I can have like 2 drinks and stop. But any more than that, I cannot focus. I can't focus. And I like to be in it if I'm being intimate with someone. So that to me, if I have had too many drinks, it's like there's no point because I'm not going to be able to focus or enjoy because I'm just like my head is all over the place because I'm drunk.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think that's really fortunate because I actually think that the 1 to 2 drink high is like the ultimate premium. Like I would buy that at the store.
Yeah.
You know, if you could just stay in that area. The
Oh
way
my
that I
God,
drank,
yeah.
I always drank way over that. And one of the things that you notice when you quit drinking is I noticed just how numb I had made myself. You know, you talk about not being able to focus. I felt like I couldn't even really feel things,
Sure.
which is also why I think a lot of drunken sex becomes a lot more like aggressive and performative. And there's a lot of like hair pulling and pushing you up against the wall because you don't actually feel things.
Sure.
That's interesting.
That makes a lot of sense.
And then, of course, the next day, if you're hungover, then, of course, you're not feeling anything then either. Yeah, that makes total sense. And is that why they call it dry drunk, too? Because, like, you're just so raw for so long because you're getting all these floods of emotions that you normally hadn't had for so long?
Oh.
Or does that mean something different?
So dry drunk is a phrase that kind of refers to somebody that stops drinking but doesn't really change anything about themselves. So in other words, they're kind of white knuckling through not drinking.
Okay.
Whereas whether you're using a program or doing something else, the idea of sobriety is usually that like you were drinking in order to fix something about yourself. Usually some central confidence issue, discomfort in your body, and you want to work through those issues.
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
But the emotion thing, too. Yeah, emotions are overrated.
Bill, are you a wet drunk?
I know. I was just thinking, does that make me a wet drunk? It does. That's a really dirty term.
Yeah.
But hey,
I immediately just pictured I'm not near any available bathrooms. Back in the day, I could be a very wet drunk. I would always have very long T-shirts for that reason alone. But I'm much better now.